Welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. My name's Nick. Go ahead and check us out on Facebook. If you search Fancounters, you'll find us there. We have a very small private Facebook group if you want to talk to us directly. That's called Sharpie Nation. We also just launched Instagram. Not a lot of love there yet. Come on, guys. It's at Fancounters Live on Instagram. Every week we post a picture of our guest and talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about on that show, so you don't miss anything. Sitting to my left today is Brian Nelson Jr. He's been on the show before as we've reunited the cast and crew of Still the Beaver and the new Leave It To Beaver, and you're here again today with another good guest for us. How are you?
I'm doing well. And as we're plugging things, your podcast is awesome. I encourage everyone to check it out. As long as we're plugging things.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're going to plug the Still the Beaver / the new Leave It To Beaver fan page, which I run on Facebook, as well as the Leave It To Beaver fan club. Check those out. And, we have more interviews that we've done with other cast members and crew. And, yeah, just check it out. And it's glad to be here. We got Peter Ware, who was a producer on the new Leave It To Beaver.
He was.
He worked on Still the Beaver. He started in the beginning, and then he worked into the new season, into the new series as it moved on to TBS. And we're going to talk with him, and we can't wait for that. It's going to be a fun time.
Now, I have to tell you, I know you're talking about it like it's coming up, and it is coming up for you, but we've already done it. 2 apologies on this one. I'm sorry, but it's hot as crap here, so my air conditioner's on, and you can hear it go whoo the whole time. It's not that bad, but like I could hear it in my headphones, so I apologize, but I don't want to sweat. And the second thing is, ever since this podcast from Indiana gave us a critique about our guest audio and how sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. It's almost been bad every single time. And today's no exception. Peter must have been traveling up a mountain or something in California in his car, no less. So the reception was spotty at times. I'm going to clean it up in post, I promise. And then we switched to his house phone, and then it was clear, and we were good to go from that point on. It's not great all the time, but the content of this show is so good because he's got so many great classic television and film memories that you'll want to at least work through the audio technical difficulties we had and enjoy the show.
And yeah, his adventures in Hollywood are the best I've heard so far. It's awesome.
It's got a good Peter Falk story at the end, so stick around. All right, here we go. Here's Peter Ware on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the Podfix Network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? Oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Peter Ware, welcome to Fancounters. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
We're doing well.
Excellent.
Good.
So I'm here with Brian Nelson Jr., and he's got our first question.
How did you break into steady work into the business that you got into?
I started in New York in the early 70s. I was actually working in another industry and got an opportunity to join a company that was doing industrial shows, which were large-scale, like theatrical stage shows for corporations for sales meetings and conventions. And I did that for a few years in New York. Then I had my own company for a while. And then I came out to California in 76. And as they say, just started knocking on doors. And eventually I produced and directed over 400 syndication shows of music, all different forms of music. So I was able to kind of cut my teeth on being able to do stuff in kind of a different manner than other people. We would literally do all the post-production up front so that when we shot the shows, they would be ready to go on the air because we had slayed all the blacks for real-time commercial breaks.
Wow.
So we were doing 13 half hours a day, 65 half hours a week.
Wow.
So we were able to fill a whole cycle pretty quickly.
So tell me about this. How do you do post-production on a show that hasn't been shot yet? What are you talking about here?
Well, it's because it's all musical variety. You do all the credits up front.
Okay.
You do all the bumpers up front, so that when you're rolling, you just, if
Slide
you're
it
ready
in.
to go to break, you just bring up the bumper for that break. You take the break for the exact time it's supposed to be, according to, syndication formatting. So if you know the commercial break's going to be 3 minutes and 10 seconds,
Got it. Mhm.
you literally let the tape roll for 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And then you come back you do it like live shows.
Okay.
Do it. So we did that for a bunch of stuff and did a bunch of specials. So as a result of that, when I came out to California, I met the man who would eventually become my mentor, Bill Asher, who had done I Love Lucy.
Okay.
And also did Bewitched. So I met him through playing tennis.
Who was also the husband of Elizabeth Montgomery, correct?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. So I was a tennis player back east. So I came out and we connected, and I used to play tennis with him all the time. And remember when they were doing plays, taping plays on the stage for cable? They would shoot, plays live, like whatever play they would
I know
think of that would be
HBO.
good.
HBO back in the day would have several of those.
Yes, absolutely. So Universal had a division that was doing that, and Bill asked me to help him out on a production of Charlie's Aunt that had a very good cast. Charles Grodin was in it, and a lot of young guys that are now stars today. So I did that, and again, using the philosophy of taping it as a live show, and because I had also done some commercial work in New York, I knew the process of shooting on film and posting on tape, which was not a real big known commodity on the West Coast. So the people who did the Charlie's Aunt show were doing Still the Beaver. They had just started it, and they wanted to do it. They wanted to shoot on film, 16 millimeter, and post on tape. So they did that for the first 13 episodes, and it was kind of a train wreck, because unless you know the techniques of doing that, there's definite pitfalls. You can spend way too much money. So they had remembered me from Charlie's Aunt and asked if I would come in and consult for them. And this was for the second run of Beaver on the Disney Channel. At the time, the Beaver show was the biggest show on Disney Channel, kind of put the Disney Channel on the map.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So,
I think it's split up into two seasons, if you will, on Disney Channel. There was like it comes up as one full season, but it's actually one was like in the summer and then the next one was in the fall. But that, chronologically it's known as season one. Right.
So I came in season 2 of the Disney run, the second 13, and kind of got them on their feet, turned it around, and turned a loss in post-production into a gain. So right after that was when Disney canceled the show, because Sheinberg and Eisner were arguing about Florida. Everybody was, Disney was in Orlando, and Universal wanted to go into Orlando. It got pretty contentious So Sid Sheinberg called Mickey Mouse a humongous ravenous rat in the press. in the press. And Disney called us and said, "You guys are canceled." So
Oh man!
back to the drawing board.
Were you really excited to join the new Leave It to Beaver television show?
I was thrilled because I used to watch the show as a kid.
I figured you might
and
have.
to walk on the set and see Jerry and Tony and Barbara and Ken and all the rest of them, Frank Bank, doing their thing and going, wow, this is like really surreal. No, I loved it. I thought it was really cool just to be a part of those people. And the production staff that Brian Levant had put together was really superb. And the writers were really good. So it was a lot of fun because we were doing some really cool stuff.
Do you have any fond memories, maybe some behind-the-scenes stories of you watching them film the new Leave It to Beaver? Maybe a story sticks in your head about something you'll never forget from your time there?
I remember once sitting on the set, and we were between takes, we're between setups, and I was just watching the guys interact with each other. It was Barbara and Jerry and Tony were doing a scene, so they were just hanging out, and it was like they were really the characters. They'd become so close in the original show, like a family, and it was like they had just taken an extended vacation. And so just watching the whole thing unfold, Barbara in the kitchen, just the way she reacted to the new boys that were in the show. It was just, the whole experience was like one big fond memory. And, there were things that I remember us doing that for the budget we had was really insane. I mean, stuff that a normal big show wouldn't even try. We would just bravely go and say, no, we can do that. We snowed in the back lot at Universal on one show. It was about Kenny wanted to win a car.
Yes.
Eddie Haskell, do you remember that one?
Yes,
Sure do.
And had his son
he had to touch
sit
the
up
car.
on the
Oh, it
billboard.
was the billboard one.
Yeah, well, we shot that in the summer. So to snow in the back lot and do the whole thing where it was freezing was a lot of work. But the actors just were natural. It just like, yeah, it's really freezing out here.
So you mentioned trying to do stuff that you didn't know if it was possible at the time. Were you then in charge of the budget for that show and
Yes.
keeping that whole thing on budget?
I was producing. They had, after my first season of the 13 shows of consulting, they asked me to produce the show because I had turned it around budget-wise. So I started producing from then on.
Oh, great.
I produced a total of 68 episodes before they went to Florida.
Did you join them in Florida?
No, I went down and helped set it up, get the studio set up, get the sets put in. But I had other commitments. I went to Columbo after Beaver.
Okay.
I'm like the king of the remakes. I went to Columbo and did 7 movies with Peter and the gang while they were in Florida.
So when did the process with Florida start? I know the season was like the last season in 1989. How far before that did you know you were going to be going to Florida? And when did that whole how did that all start?
They had called me and said, and one of the guys, labor relations and everything, called me and said, well, we've made a deal with the unions in Florida for us to be able to go and shoot something. They were building, they hadn't even finished it when we got there. They were building the theme park, and they wanted a prestige show to be shooting down there when the theme park opened. And their big idea was to have like a glass corridor where people could walk by in the soundstage while we were shooting. I said, guys, that's really not going to happen, but it's a nice try. So they said, well, we want the show to go to Florida. And I said, okay. I didn't think it was the world's best idea, but then again, I didn't run the studio, so it didn't matter. So they wanted me to go down and produce the show, but I had a young family and didn't want to move for 9 months, or didn't want to leave my family for 9 months.
Sure.
And a Columbo offer was on the table, so I said, "No, I'll do Columbo," because prestige-wise, it was a step up because it was a big show.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started. So we went down and literally went into an empty building, an empty soundstage, and started putting the show in. They did a very nice job building the sound stages. And so the next time I was down there, I had done a show in New Orleans, and I went by Florida, stopped in Florida. My family came down, but I stopped by the studio, and I didn't recognize that all the other buildings were up and the theme park was going. So that was all part of that initial competition between them and Disney.
Those sets were all trucked in from LA, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, just checking. I didn't think they'd restart from scratch. That would be...
No. Everything was brought down from Hollywood, and they arrived in good shape, and it was like, putting a jigsaw back together again. Make sure wall A goes with wall B. So it worked out fine, and I don't think you could really tell the difference between what was shot in Hollywood and what was shot in Florida, except for the exterior stuff. Yeah, it was a big deal to move a show line because we were one of the stalwarts of the studio in LA. We were using 3 sound stages, the back lot, up on what was Pine Street. For the exteriors, we did all our exteriors on the lot, with the exception of going out a few times. Once when do you remember the dinosaur show?
Sure do.
Where the boys hand dug a pool for Eddie,
and Oliver finds the bone. Yeah.
I mean, I think about this stuff, and just the readings. I would say that's my most memorable part of the show, was the script readings every week. The cast would come in and read the script for the producers to have a chance to tune it up after that, and the director would get a sense of how the jokes were playing and what the rhythm of the dialogue was. But I just remember those readings were hysterical. They were very, very funny.
I said that would have been really neat to be in that room.
It was.
Witness that.
It was. Talk about a great glimpse behind the scenes. I mean, I obviously, as the producer, I got to see and do a lot of the shaping of how the show got put together. So it was fun. There's no doubt. It was fun. Good hours. We'd be done by 7 o'clock every night. Those, as they say, were the days.
So you had mentioned that, once you took the job for Still the Beaver and you got on the stage, you got into the studio, you saw the actors on stage, and it was like a surreal experience. Did you form any relationships with these actors?
Oh yeah, Tony Dow and I are still very close friends. Brian Levan, obviously, and I have done a lot of stuff over the years together. But Tony is the closest one. John Snee is, he lives in the same town I do, so I see him once in a while, but I've kept in touch with him. But Tony and I would say, are the closest relationship. And when you think about it, I mean, these guys, these actors, are icons. They were in the golden age of television.
Right.
For them to come back. My only disappointment is that the show never got a real chance at being on either a network TV again or got a lot of publicity for syndication. I think it was off the air for a long time, even though we had made 108 shows or whatever it turned out to be. It wasn't steadily on the air. And I really wish that they had received the acclaim that they deserved. because it's pretty cool to be able to bring back an iconic show and do it well. I mean,
Right.
You know, a
And
lot of
that's-
times they
yeah.
try that and it doesn't work.
Oh yeah.
I thought what we did was really good
Oh,
and
exactly.
very true to the original.
It was. And the thing is a lot of people don't know about it because it was on, first it was on the Disney Channel, which back then was a premium channel. So,
Right.
and then when it went to cable, it went to TBS, and yet it's on cable. It's not on network TV.
Right.
When it did go into syndication, it didn't hit a lot of markets. It wasn't in every single market.
Right.
I was lucky enough where we had a local TV station here, which is now a CW station, and it played it on syndication up until the early 90s, and then it left the air, and that's the last we heard of it, which is
Right.
very, very sad because, I love that show,
Yeah,
and
it is,
I
but that's,
yeah.
it's, unfortunately, that's what happens. And now you look at channels like MeTV, and you go, "Wow, Beaver would have been perfect for MeTV."
Right.
And I don't know if they've ever tried to turn around and say, "Let's try and sell it to them," because MeTV runs all of this kind of programming.
Right. The only problem now is there's rumors that the masters are lost, and there's all this and that, and I prefer to take those.
That whole Turner deal
Yeah.
was really weird.
Yeah, it was, and I prefer to think of that as an ugly rumor, and hopefully one day they'll resurface. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not the problem, but the challenge now is we shot that on 16 millimeter.
Right.
So you would have to go back to the negatives.
Yep.
Pretty sure we were cutting negative then. Go back to the negatives when it was being shot on 16 and be able to get those negative masters and then retransfer them to HD or 4K or 3K or whatever is going to happen.
Yep.
Right.
I'm not sure that 16 holds up to that. Because the standards for television have changed so drastically in a short amount of time.
Oh, no kidding.
As far as technical.
Very quickly, yeah.
So I don't know. It would be an interesting experiment.
So you said you formed a pretty close relationship with Tony.
Right.
Nick and I had the pleasure. We talked to Eric and Christian Osmond. We did that Zoom. We did it via Zoom. It was kind of cool.
Right.
And and Ken was still alive at that time, and we were able to speak about what it was like for them to work with their dad on the show.
Yep.
Do you have any fond memories of Ken Osmond?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Kenny was great. Kenny was very quiet for a guy who was, kind of that bombastic as an actor. As an individual, he was very quiet. I got to know, and I still am in touch with Eric Osmond, and have worked with Eric in Eric's capacity as an editor a couple of times with Brian. So, Eric is he's a cool guy, and Kenny was a little maybe intimidating, because you stand there and look at him and go, "That's Eddie Haskell."
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's he going to say to me? But he was a very nice guy. There was no doubt about that.
Well, Jerry always says that he was the complete opposite of what he was on screen. Real life, he was not Eddie Haskell at all.
Yep. No, he wasn't. So it was, you talk to some actors and they act like the person they portray, but it shows a really good actor when they have a character that they play and it's not anything like themselves. And that really was Kenny. You'd never know talking to him socially that he was Eddie Haskell.
What about Frank Bank? What about your memories with him?
Frank. Frank didn't do a lot of shows. He did a bunch, but not a lot. He wasn't in every show. But Frank was literally larger than life, figuratively and whatever else. And he was he was into the stock market.
Correct.
And Frank had made a lot of money. And if you went to Central Casting and said, okay, bring me a guy who looks like he has a lot of money, who's a player in the stock market, and has an actor's temperament, you'd have Frank. And I used to love talking to him. Him and Roger Deschoney, one of the other directors that did a lot of episodes, became good friends because I think Roger was in the market also. So he was always terrific.
Which was the reason why he wasn't.
Let's do that. And
right. Which is the reason why he wasn't on the show very much, because he was involved with his business quite a bit.
Oh yeah, no, his business kept him very, very busy.
Right.
Yeah.
And while we're remembering cast members, how about Barbara? I've heard is the most gracious lady out there. You know,
my gosh.
She was June
She
Cleaver.
is June.
Yeah.
She is June. There's no doubt. And I mean, you know, unfortunately, from a career standpoint, the original Leave It to Beaver really pegged her as June Cleaver. And it was hard to get out of that stereotype for her.
Yeah, that's
classic.
Right. And that's usually like, it's kind of a curse, but it's kind of a blessing. You know, you end up with, with worldwide fan, fame.
You become an icon, but then again,
you can't find anything else.
Because people go, oh, that's June Cleaver.
Right.
Brian told me a story of when they were trying to get Leave It to Beaver, the movie on, that had who the cast members were. They didn't do any of the cast members from our show, but Universal did. Chris McDonald, I think, was in it. They did a movie called Leave It to Beaver or The Beaver or something.
Right, it was Leave It to Beaver, and it was it wasn't very good. Oh.
No, they went to pitch that upstairs at the studio, and they're in the room, and all the executives there and everything else. The door opens, and Barbara Billingsley walks in with a tray with a pitcher of milk and chocolate chip cookies on it for the executives.
Oh, wow.
And I think her line was, now, okay, boys, let's just get this done. And that kind of sealed it. They said, yeah, all right, we need to do this movie. Because I was
they
did protesting.
Oh, yeah. They had cameos with Ken and Frank and Barbara.
Yeah.
Frank's was kind of small. He's like, hello, and out of the screen. And Ken's was kind of cool. He actually repeated a line that he did with his son in the new Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool.
Well, it was great to see Ken be able to work with Eric and Christian Palmer.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Peter, I want to turn our conversation away from the new Leave It to Beaver a little bit, because you haven't stopped working since then. In fact, you've gone from producing to doing some visual effects producing, which I want to hear a little bit about. So, for example, a few years back, about 4 years ago, we had a TV miniseries called Bonnie and Clyde. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those things that you did on, say, a show like that? What does a visual effects producer do exactly?
Primarily involved in coordinating, getting the shot list put together with the supervisor, working on the budget with the show, making sure that you have what you need, or if you don't, then suggesting, and from a visual effects standpoint, you suggest very mildly because you get into dangerous territory. But what else of the show can be changed to lighten the load on the visual effects requirement? Because everybody's got a bigger appetite in their budget when it comes to visual effects. Because it's endless. Oh, you don't like that sky? Well, just change it. Okay, well, that's not free.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has to sit down and do that. So the producer, the captain of the visual effects ship, and make sure that the supervisor, as a producer would with a director, that the supervisor doesn't start putting up more than you can allow.
Okay.
Because having supervised also, it's very easy to get caught up in the moment and say, oh, yeah, that would be cool. But what about this? And all of a sudden, you've just blown a hole in the budget, and the people back at the shop, have to make the shot and get it done. So, you got to, it's like anything else, it's creative people management.
So it sounds like you're telling me there are certain times or situations when visual effects might not necessarily need to be used. You'd rather just be shooting what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have said that, guys, you can do this practically if you just change your thought process a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, unless it's really a heavy visual effects movie, directors don't want to be saddled with visual effects. If there's a mistake and you have to erase some crew people or whatever, that's fine. That's a fix it. But if you're not a visual effects based show, the directors don't want to get burdened down with extra stuff, even though it may be cool. Now that's, ER was not a visual effects show, but we were shooting a sequence on a train platform. I was supervising that show at the time. We were shooting a sequence on a train platform where the two of the girls come up the steps and they're talking. So they had built a set for the steps and the platform. We had a big green screen behind it, and it was just going to be that the train comes into the station and they get on it, or they just walk over and get on a train. Well, they had a practical subway train car, and then the rest was up to us. And I said to the director, I said, look, instead of them just walking over or we see the train car there, why don't we have the train pull in and they get on the car? Well, he looked at me like I had just, dropped through the ceiling from another planet. He said, what are you talking about? We can't do it. I said, sure. I said, it's all in the angles and how you shoot it and where you cut. He said, okay. He said, if you can do it. And ER was very generous with spending money if they thought it was a good idea. That's why it was such a good show.
Yeah, that's
maybe one of the
key.
best run shows I've ever seen on television. Because it was huge. They did some hugely complicated stuff. So anyway, we had the girls come up with a green screen, city behind them, the tracks, a CG train pulls up, we pan back over to the girls, leaving the train out of frame. And when we pan back, they've walked over to the train that's sitting on the set that we never showed. So it looked like the train pulled in and they got on it.
Cool.
So that's an example of a show not being a visual effects show, but using visual effects to make what would be an ordinary shot something better.
Well, and I think that what you just said, people probably don't appreciate the fact that you did that work with ER to make it look so realistic, because they probably just took it for granted that they were shooting in a train station or wherever they were supposed to be. So you actually might be working in a department that doesn't get much of the props that it should if people don't know how things are put together.
No, it doesn't. Because of the understanding or lack thereof. And if you do the work seamlessly and nobody notices, and that's the whole point. It's supposed to be invisible. Anytime a visual effect that is not like space, No, I'm going to come in. Hold on one sec, guys. I'm going to unplug you. Yeah.
No problem.
Anytime you want to do a shot like an extension, like a set extension or whatever, you want it to be seamless. You don't want the audience to know that it's a visual effect. You know, and obviously if it is like a space show, he's supposed to be flying around in space. Well, yeah, people do know that that's a visual effect because nobody's flying around out of space.
They're not? Oh, man.
No, sorry. I was the supervising producer on the pilot for Orville. You know what I'm saying? We was the supervising producer for Orville, the
Okay.
Stephen McFarlane show. And so we did all the 3D spaceships. And because it was John Favreau directing, and of course Seth, being Seth, they had to be perfect. Well, we were doing literally feature quality visual effects for a TV show. So that's when it gets a little tough because the money's never enough.
Right. And TV
So that's
budgets
a
are much
good
tighter. Yeah.
Absolutely. They, I'm sure big movies spend more on catering than we get to use for a whole episode.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, I know that actors are always looking for their next job. Did you find after your kind of career started snowballing where you're getting project after project, did you have less competition to get a job, or are you still doing the same amount of networking and all of that to get your next gig?
You have to network all the time because, you know, the expression "you're only as good as your last show" is very true. Actors can rely a little bit more on their ability to act, but a producer, you either have the network and are a wanted commodity, or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to always, it's how you pick projects, and it's kind of a negative situation if you look at a project and say, if this thing goes horribly wrong, what's going to happen to me? Because the bigger the projects are, the bigger the risk is.
Sure.
So I tried to be careful, didn't always. I wasn't always careful. Tried to be careful with the projects that I said yes to, and would do my homework, because if there was a possibility that it was a bad director or whatever the situation was, at the end of the day, it's the producer who gets to blame.
Are you comfortable in telling us one of those projects that you wish you hadn't done?
That I wish I hadn't done?
Yeah.
Let me see. I would say the Asteroid situation was very, very different. I had been traveling a lot and away from home, which I didn't really like.
Okay.
NBC called and said, "Would you consult on a project for us? Take a look at it. We're getting ready to do." I said, "Sure." So I spent a week reading the script, kind of doing the due diligence on the people, director, art director, auditor, accountant, producer, all the people that they had already hired. And I came back to the studio at NBC, and they said, "You're about $2 million short on this." And they said, "Okay." They had worked out some deal with the show where they had paid him for work already, and then so he was on the hook for the overages. So I thought, well, okay. So I finished having the conversation with the head of production at NBC. On my way home, the phone rings. It's my agent. All right, my agent says the executive producer of the show wants to meet with you. And I said, "Fine, we can do that." And he said, "No, he wants to meet with you now."
Ooh.
I said, "What do you mean now?" I mean, now this consulting job for NBC was completely hush-hush. Nobody knew about it. Nobody was told about it. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I was just doing this for a week. NBC was kind of backstopping their, investment. And Asteroid was a huge undertaking by any stretch of the imagination. 2-night blow up the world scenario. So I said, "Fine." So we picked a restaurant out in the valley somewhere, and I met with him, and he didn't mention anything about the meeting. Nothing. He just said, "Well, we've heard a lot about you." And I'm thinking, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
Well, it's good if you're sitting in that room, right at that time.
That's right. If I'm in the restaurant and I'm not being poisoned, it's good. So I said, well, what are you looking for? And he said, what we really need, because this is such a huge visual effects show. Now, I had done 2 movies before that had a lot of visual effects in them. So I got pigeonholed as a visual effects production producer who knew visual effects,
Right.
which there were very few of. So they said, we'd like you to handle the post-production, because they knew I did that for Columbo, and we would like you to handle visual effects. And you'll be working in Burbank, and you don't have to travel, you don't have to be out of town. It'll be great. I said, wow, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So I said yes to that. And we got the whole show prepped for visual effects, got the budget, went down to Denver a couple of times, met with the director, met with the producer, got the number I needed for the visual effects that were listed in the show, and we were ready to go. Everything, we were really soundly prepped. There was a lot of miniature shooting involved in that, and pyro and everything else. So I was very happy that the company we had chosen, actually I didn't choose them, the show had chosen them before I came on. They were very sound, good filmmakers. So I said, all right, well, I feel good about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I go down to Denver for the last production meeting, which was like on a Friday. And there seemed to be a little tension between the producer and the first AD and the director. And I went down to Denver on a Friday for the production meeting.
Okay.
And they were going to start shooting they decided to start their week on a Saturday because of the locations they needed. So I go down there, and there was tension between some people, and the first AD and the producer and the director, and I didn't pay much attention to it because I just figured, well, that's not my problem. I'm going home.
Sure.
So I went home. They started shooting on Saturday. I got a call from the executive producer on Sunday evening at home. And I said, what's up? And he goes, I need you to come back down to Denver.
Oh, no.
I said, well, what do you mean? I was just there. He said, no, you need to bring a bigger suitcase.
Oh, boy.
I said, okay. I said, what's going on? And he's going, well, the producer, the line producer, and the director are at each other's throats, and the director will not go on the set if the line producer is there.
Oh, man.
Whoa.
Now, to make matters worse, the director is NBC's fair-haired boy. So he's no one can touch him. So I said, well, geez. I said, when do you need me to come down? And he said, well, is there a plane tonight? I said, no, wait a minute. I can't just get up and leave. I've got a $3 million budget on visual effects and post that I have to turn over to somebody. I can't just walk away from it.
Yeah.
I said, I need at least a day to get somebody in there to oversee. I'm still going to have to run it, but I need someone to oversee it.
Right.
I said, I can come Tuesday. So I fly to Denver on Tuesday. I get there. I get driven to set. And this should have been the first indication for me to turn around and get back on the plane. I get to the set, and the director says, hey, man, how you doing? I said, good. And he goes, listen, he said, I need you to play this little minor part because the actor we had won't do it. It's too small. I went, what?
Now you're in the movie.
I said, now you want me to be an actor? He said, yeah. I said, okay. Did you ever see the miniseries Asteroid?
I did. I remember this from the late 90s.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not going to remember any details about it, but I definitely, once you brought that up and I looked up the picture on the IMDb, I was like, oh, I've seen this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was FEMA man. So I had lines at the, when they were evacuating everybody. I had lines in front of the bus where a lady's trying to get on the bus, and I'm going, you can't get on the bus, it's full. And our hero comes over and says, put her on the bus. So that was my big acting debut, where I ended up getting residuals of like 10 cents by the time the run was over.
Nice.
But anyway, so I had conditions to do this. There were certain members of this crew that I wanted replaced with my replacements because I wasn't going to take over something I already knew was going to go over budget. And they didn't do it. They didn't replace the people I wanted to replace who were in critical areas of the film. And so we kept slugging away. And I mean, we would be shooting on a Wednesday and supposed to move to a location on Thursday, and they hadn't set the location yet because they were having problems negotiating the deal. So I said, all right, where are we going? And they said, we don't know. And I said, no, that's the wrong answer. Where are we shooting tomorrow? And they said, well, we wanted to go out to the college. And I said, all right, have someone take me to the college. Went to the college, sat down with the dean for 20 minutes maybe, walked out with a deal in hand for the time we needed and for a price. It's not that hard to do. I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, it's kind of basic. But I guess it's personalities. I guess she liked me better than the other producer, who was kind of gruff. So then all of a sudden, I'm the guy who saved the movie. So my exit window is getting shorter and shorter.
So here's I just have to know this real quick before you move on. When they don't replace people that you say are critical, that they need to be replaced because they're, creating bad karma on the set, they're not getting things done, they're fighting with people, and they don't do it. Doesn't that create some animosity with you and the production at that point to be like, well, whatever, I tried, because it doesn't seem like that happened with you.
Yeah, it did. No, there was a certain amount of animosity, but it turned out that either I go down and fix the problem or it's going to get shut down. What I didn't know, and I think it was my agent who told me this, but there was a feeling that I was kind of... the studio forced the production to bring me on because they weren't completely satisfied with the production's choice of line producer. So the studio said, look, then you bring him in to handle post and visual effects, but we want him on this movie. All of this I didn't know. I just did some consulting and said, okay, fine, here's what's going to happen if things continue. So we go through the 37-day shoot, arduous shoot, more pyro than I've ever seen, ever. Thank God nobody got hurt. We had some accidents on the set, but they weren't due to pyro. So we get done. Now I knew we were over, so I had a meeting in my trailer at the end of shooting. I had the production line producer who I had replaced there, the production accountant, the executive producer, and the director. I said, okay, guys, we're done shooting. I need to know right now, as we leave this state before Thanksgiving, where are we, overage-wise? Because the other executive producer that owned the company is going to be curious as to what his obligation's going to be. So they gave me a number. I said, are you sure? Yeah, we're sure. I said, okay, go back home, Thanksgiving, get a call. The number has doubled. I went, what? And it's the main executive producer, not the head guy who owns the company. I said, what? He said, yeah, it's doubled. And I said, well, something's going on, and something's wrong. So get to the office. And it's now at the magic number of 2 million.
Ooh.
So now the guys at NBC aren't allowed to talk to me because they think something's gone horribly wrong or screwy. They sent a team down to do forensic accounting, and they found purchase orders stuffed in drawers that had never been entered on the books. It was just a mess, and the production accountant was one of the people I wanted to replace because I didn't think he had the chops to do something that big. And I was obviously right.
I was going to say, you're right.
Yeah, I was right.
$2 million.
So anyway, I mean, I predicted most of the stuff that happened would happen.
Mm-hmm.
People would ignore it because it's not, no one wants to face bad news or act on it. Instead of being proactive, everybody is reactive.
Right.
So, yeah. So at the end of the day, it was like, so NBC made a deal with the company that produced the movie that we'll take care of the overage and we'll give you your foreign money back. We'll give you your foreign money. The movie was the biggest foreign success that NBC ever had.
Wow.
By far. And it was one of the most successful domestic shows in that decade.
Well, kudos to you, too, because
10 years.
the
75 million people saw it.
Wow. I was going to say the box for the foreign release has best visual effects ever or something written on it. So that was obviously due to your department.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, it's on IMDb, the case. I should have left it up. But yeah, it makes direct reference to those effects.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So we were nominated. I don't think we won. But I had moved on by the time the Emmys came out.
For sure, yeah.
And should have been on the nomination, but wasn't. Because whether you win or not, it's good to be nominated.
Oh, yeah.
So, from a standpoint of potentially what that show could have cost me, that show could have ended my career.
Yeah.
I got called on another big show, and the executive producer started saying, well, we don't want to have going on what went on that show. Or we can't, afford those kind of overages. And I said, well,
no.
Here's the deal. First of all, you don't know what you're talking about because you weren't there. If you're listening to rumor, ignore it. If you really want to know what happened on that film, ask me.
Yeah.
He just kind of looked at me blankly, and I called my agent, and I said, I'm not touching this thing with a 10-foot pole. And it never got off the ground.
Wow. Well, you dodged a bullet there then.
Yeah, it died in development. When they started realizing what it was going to cost them, they said, not us. I actually got another movie based on costing that executive producer, supposedly me costing the executive producer $2 million. A guy from Fox called me. He said, I want to just meet, not alone work, but I want to meet the guy who got into this guy's pocket for $2 million. So I ended up doing another movie after Asteroid that, in my right mind, I wouldn't have done, but it was Australia, and it was 5 months in the summer.
Oh, okay.
And why not?
Why not?
Why not? Fun little romp through the surf with some sea creatures. That's okay.
Yeah.
I also turned down The Creature. I don't know if you're familiar with that, about the shark that grows legs and walks on land.
No, I definitely missed that one.
Well, the guys that were putting that together, they actually got it made. Craig T. Nelson starred in it.
Oh, wow.
The guy, I had gotten I think a synopsis or something to read on it. And I had a meeting with the production company and the guys at the production company. So I said, you're going to make Land Shark, huh? The guy just stared at me.
This stuff sounds ridiculous when you read it.
Insane. Yeah, are you insane? I didn't hear back from him. And I knew the guys, so I knew them after that. But when I said, you're really going to make Land Shark? I said, never mind. They went through like 6 producers on that movie.
Wow.
Before it finished.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this film now, too, and I'm just thinking I have to look up this movie and watch it because I want
Creature? Yeah. Yeah.
Because even the
This thing
the pictures
evolves.
of the shark look ridiculous. It's like a monster shark.
It's a monster shark that grows legs and walks up out of the ocean.
Yeah, I don't know about that,
In a
Peter.
cave.
Yeah,
And I said, no.
looks
So
interesting.
if I'm going to do a cheeseball movie, I'm going to do something I'm not going to get crucified for.
Wow. Hey, one question I'm wondering is, you have worked in this industry for over 4 decades. Did you ever
Right.
find yourself starstruck with any particular actor or director or anything like that?
Yeah, sure.
Let me
Peter
hear some of.
Falk.
Let me hear some of that.
Huh?
Oh, around who? Like, let me hear a story about.
Peter Falk.
Huh?
I was a huge fan of Peter's. I was always a fan. There were times I wanted to hug him and times I wanted to strangle him. He had a bit of a temper, and when he would go off, he would go off. And I don't really react well to temperamental actors, but it was Peter Falk. I mean, I was in awe of Walter Matthau when I worked with him. The whole cast of Movers and Shakers, I was in awe of because we had some of the best comedy talent on the planet at the time. That was a feature I did with Bill Asher and Chuck Grodin. Let's see, I wasn't in awe of Eric Roberts, but he has a certain personality about him that, again, can be charming one minute and just drive you crazy the next. Robert Wagner, I was definitely in awe of.
Yeah.
Because he's always been just like a movie star. He is the quintessential movie star.
For sure.
And we got to be good friends as a result of working with him on this Gun for Hire. This Gun for Hire could have been, with the exception of RJ, could have replaced Asteroid on the list of movies I wish I hadn't done. Only because I turned down a pretty big offer for a series because I was already in Louisiana prepping this Gun for Hire. But no, my presence made no difference to that movie because they had their own. The studio gave the lead control to the production company that had a habit of going over budget. And the studio said, we're not going to have that. So they called me and they said, we need you to bring this in on time and budget. And I did, but not without some bumps and bruises. Yeah, that was one that I could have left that one off my life and been a lot better off for it.
I did ask you about the project that you wish you hadn't taken, but walk us through the project that you feel showcases your work the best. Like, if you want to be remembered for one project, it would be what?
Oh, wow. I'm very proud of Doctor Who, the movie I did for Doctor Who. New Leave It To Beaver, I think, is the best producing work I ever did, just because the obstacles were so large from a standpoint of what was on the page and what was on the budget.
Excellent.
Captain Zoom, I had a lot of fun, but I don't think anybody's going to remember me for Captain Zoom. Doctor Who, only because I went into it just like completely naive until I realized what it was. I didn't know the fan base. I wasn't a fan of Doctor Who. I remember watching it in New York on HBO back in the 70s with the cheesy little Daleks and stuff running around thinking, oh my God, this thing is really silly. And then to turn around and produce a movie that was the only American-made movie of the Doctor Who franchise.
Okay.
Huge, huge hit. And when I started hearing about Doctor Who and how big it was in Europe especially, and I was thinking, wow, this thing's gigantic. And the executive producer, who was English, said, you have no idea how big this is. He said, people will line up around the block just to see the actor that plays the Doctor.
Wow.
And Paul McGann, who played Doctor Who, had a real hard time saying yes to it because he knew the minute he donned that costume and went flying around in the TARDIS, his life wouldn't be the same.
Right.
And unfortunately, he only did the one movie because it was meant to be a series, but it didn't do a big enough number in the States. It did the number for Fox. Fox's typical big number was an 11 share, which today, anybody getting 11 share, they'd throw a parade. But back then, an 11 share, I mean, that was Fox's number. It was gigantic overseas, and it was gigantic in video. But it didn't have enough it didn't have enough oomph in the United States to get picked up as a series. So that was luckily for Paul McGann, that kind of let him off the hook. But we had, I mean, there was trials and tribulations on that film. There are in every film, but that one, as from a standpoint of satisfaction as a producer, and the recognition it got me, I think that's probably at the top of the list. As I got the call from NBC to consult on Asteroid as a result of that screening.
Oh, really?
We did a big screening at DGA Theater, and two of the production executives from NBC came up and said, "So now, really, what did you spend on that?" And I told them, and they said, "No, okay, what's the tax going to?" They said, "No, really, hard cash." I said, "No, that really is hard cash, and that's to the dime." And they went, "Wow." So I got a call after that. Because they said, well, the guy obviously knows what he's doing. After the whole thing with Asteroid happened, and the NBC guys couldn't talk to me, weren't allowed to talk to me, and all the smoke cleared and everybody realized, I sat down and had a meeting with two of the execs and explained kind of the story I explained to you. I went into more detail with personalities and stuff. And they said, so basically what you're saying is you saved the show. I said, well, let me put it this way. The show was like a train off the tracks headed for a school bus full of nuns. I said, and we didn't hit them. But the train was still off the track. Right. I said, but we didn't hit the nuns. So nobody died. So that's a good thing. So I said, oh. So a week later, we had another meeting, and they offered me a job as a production executive at NBC.
Oh, wow.
So I went from don't talk to him to let's hire him.
That's pretty good in show business.
Yeah, that's Hollywood for you. So, yeah, but I enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed the people. And I think, again, we did some really, really good work for the money on that show. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but if you're a fan of Doctor Who, take a look.
Definitely.
I think it's the best that's been done, and I'm not prejudiced at all.
Sometimes people can critique their work, and they can know the bad in it, and they can know the good as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's projects where I've made mistakes in the approach, or there was only one movie I've ever done that I didn't do the finish on, that I didn't finish all the post, and supervise the mix and all the rest of it. And that was the Gargantua film for Fox.
Oh, okay.
Because I had a pilot commitment coming back from Australia right away. And I told the guys at Fox, I said, if you want to pay me what they're paying to do the post, I'll do the post. And they go, no, we can't do that. And I said, fine, then you should have had an associate producer on this thing.
Yeah.
I produced the movie. Here's the movie. Finish it. And they did a bad finish on it. And they wrecked it. I mean, it wasn't a great movie to begin with, so they took it an extra few yards.
You know, it's just so in Hollywood they tend to like to pinch their dollars. You know, their budgets get real tight, and you could always see that in the movies. You know, the Superman movies. You know, the first one was phenomenal. It was great.
Yep.
And then they went and they wanted to cut budgets big time, and that's when it just went bad. And the fourth one the budget was cut to nothing. The whole entire budget was put into a whole different movie, not even in that franchise, and it was just awful. So yeah, I mean, spending money.
Here's the rationale behind that. The rationale is, look, they loved the first one. It was a giant smash hit. They love the franchise. They love the character. We don't have to outdo ourselves on the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth movies of this franchise. It just has all the pictures have to be right side up, and we have to make sure you can hear the dialogue and hear the music.
Right.
It doesn't have to be spectacular because people will come regardless.
Right. But then the numbers
People
show
come for the fulfillment of Superman. They don't know. That,
right. They'll come for the initial
got
first
cheaped out.
showing. They'll come for the first showing, but then they may like, oh yeah, it was good, great movie. It was Superman, but then once was enough. So they're not making 3 or 4 times than what they could.
But that didn't stop people from coming to see it.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You know, the critics, as you know, God love them. The critics don't put butts in the seat.
That's correct.
The movie does. So, if a critic is that well respected, he can warn people away. But if it's a franchise based on a DC comic that people grew up with, of course they want to see what Superman's going to do. You know, that's just the nature of an audience. It's total escapism. I mean, my wife hates going to movies with me because I see every mistake, and it's hard to be quiet.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, continuity things drive me absolutely insane.
Oh, me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
I mean,
I see him all
some
the
guy
time.
will be having a drink, and I'll watch the drink, and I'll go, seriously, there's got to be a script supervisor on the set going, his drink should be at this level.
Yeah.
But there's so much going on in every scene, it's hard for one person to catch it.
Yeah, or
Right.
they leave the restaurant during the day and they get home at night. And I'm like, how far
Yeah.
away were you from that restaurant? And I see that all the time.
Well, Peter Falk used to be, he used to drive the script supervisor crazy with his cigar. His cigar was never the same length. And she would say, Peter, that cigar is the wrong length. And so finally he said, Esther, nobody cares about the cigar. They care about what I'm saying. So screw the cigar. Right. So she never brought it up again.
Well, Peter, it's been fun talking to you. I just have one more question.
Thank you. Sure.
First of all, mutual friend Cindy Beagle, she says hello.
Oh, hello, Cindy.
And, you know, I run the new Leave It To Beaver fan page on Facebook. I'm just wondering if you've had a chance to look at that and what are your thoughts? And if you haven't.
I haven't yet. I'm sorry.
That's all
but
right.
I will.
Take a look.
will.
Yeah, I started it back out in 2006. Or 28, roughly 10 years ago, I think maybe 2009.
Wow.
And yeah, so when I remember I thought of the idea, and this is how naive I get sometimes because I think it's so great. I thought I better get this thing out there before someone else does it before me. But it's the only thing out there, and we've grown it to around 3,000 people, which isn't the
that's
20,000, but
Well, that's nice.
But yeah, it's nice. Yeah, take a look at it, and yeah, we have a lot of the cast that are members of it. There's Cindy's also a member of it. Janice Kent's a member of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really cool.
Good. I will definitely take a look at it. And it's the new Leave It To Beaver on Facebook.
It's called the new Leave It To Beaver / Still the Beaver fan page.
Okay. I will definitely look it up.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, for a great conversation, bringing us behind the
thank you for
scenes of your
calling and
career.
having me on your podcast.
Oh, I loved it. My thanks to Peter Ware for being on the show this week, another guy connected to the new Leave It To Beaver. Thanks for bringing him aboard, Brian. It was a good interview.
Oh, absolutely. It was great. It's great that we're able to do this. I mean, I had never thought in my lifetime that I'd be talking to these people. It's great. And the stories that he had were just absolutely phenomenal. I can you imagine starting on a show, you're asked to work on a show and then you're given another responsibility to the show. You didn't expect that at all. And then lo and behold, you have an acting part.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, whoa. I mean, a lot of people just are happy to get one job at a time. But
Well, I don't think he wanted those other jobs, though.
they came after. Yeah, the people that want them, they don't get them. That's usually how it works.
And then he was talking about sequels, how they make the first one really good and then the rest of them don't have to be so good. Perfect example of that for me is Men in Black. Men in Black 1 was awesome. It was just fantastic. And 2, you knew that Tommy Lee and Will Smith were going to come back together and they were going to be really great, and they were, but the movie just was not that awesome. And then 20 years later, they make another one that was just barf crazy nastiness. Like, that was probably just a moneymaker. Because did you see the latest Men in Black?
Yeah.
What did you think?
No.
It was awful.
Yeah.
It was a waste of time.
And he was talking about, I brought up the Superman movies. The Superman 4 was just absolutely, it looked like a B movie. It was really bad. The flying effects, terrible. I mean, I understand if you have to cut some costs because you want to make the money. You want to make the money on the name. Okay, that's fine. But your visual effects have to be there, especially for movies like that. That would be like Star Wars, with having shadow effects for spaceships.
Right.
It was just bad. But yeah, it was cool to get that insight from him as well.
Well, thanks for being here, Brian. COVID and all. Well, we're COVID free.
We're COVID free.
But I appreciate you coming out to the studio.
Absolutely.
Now, do you have a guest that you want me to bring on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast? If you do, just email me at hello@fancounters.com. Earlier this month, we had Mary Scheer on the show from iCarly and a lot of those other Disney and Nickelodeon shows, which was a guest request from a fan listening just like you are. So if you want to be a part of the show and ask the celebrity of your choice some questions, send us their name, and if I get them on the show, I'll reach back out. Once again, the email, hello@fancounters.com. We'll be back next week with another celebrity guest, so we hope to see you again next Friday. Have a good week, everybody. Bye-bye.